It's not just about Formula E's fixed IP entering a space, but also how you can be creative with the IP. Gaming Arena is like our most popular fan village activation. Fans were having to wait, if you can believe it, between 2 and 3 hours to get a 9-minute race on a simulator. I would love it to turn it into mass market products and experiences. I'm super interested in the experiential side. So we're the fastest accelerating single-seater race car. Could we create the fastest accelerating roller coaster? Roblox is such a creative platform, and you see it in the way that a lot of the IPs show up.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Speakeasy. I'm Joe Conlon, this is Jay Stewart, and today we're joined by Sanjay Shivaram from Formula E. Sanjay,
Yes.
Welcome to the show.
Looking forward to it.
Sanjay, we always like to kick off with, I guess, your route to where you are now. So maybe we can talk through that kind of long journey that you've had to getting to Formula E.
Yeah, I started off in strategy consulting. So if you go way back, I did economics, and there were two routes: banking or consulting, basically. And so I decided, I've always been fascinated in business, always been a motorsport fan. I decided to take, in my mind, the lesser of two evils. So chose the consulting route, get closer to business. So I joined a company called Roland Berger, and I was there for 4.5 years. And it was a mix of advisory and kind of corporate due diligence, so transactions, M&A work. It was about 60% M&A, 40% advisory, and we worked across industries. And it's a German consultancy, kind of competes with the likes of Bain, BCG, McKinsey. Very focused on industrial, so German industries, so heavy industries, automotive, aerospace, manufacturing. So I could work on anything from a company that produces a nut and bolt that fits onto a ship vessel, through to the alcohol industry. So super varied. And at some point, I realized I wanted to focus on an area of passion. So there was an opportunity that came out. I took a year of travel because I needed that. And then took an opportunity to join the central strategy team at Formula E, which is just a apply interview process. Spoke to the hiring manager on LinkedIn. So joined the central strategy team as manager, then senior manager for nearly 3 years, most of which was working across all parts of the business. So retail and licensing, what I manage now, hospitality, event experience. There was some project management of new initiatives during the pandemic. That was a tough time for the sport, all sport, but Formula E. And then I moved horizontally to work in a cross-functional media strategy role for our chief media officer. Shout out Artie DeBass, if you know her.
Yes,
for a year. And then after a year, I went back to central strategy as a director and also took over gaming effectively. So I was kind of managing strategy and gaming. So that was 3 years ago. And then a year ago, gaming merged with retail and licensing, because a lot of what we do in gaming is licensing, which we'll speak about. And so for the last year, I've been managing retail licensing in gaming. So I would say it's a long answer to your question, but lots of moves. I've never been in a role within Formula E for more than a year and 8 months, year and 9 months. So even though I've been at Formula E for 6.5 years, which is a long time, I've had a lot of variation, lots of really wide breadth of experience.
I guess there's not many people that get to shift around as much as you have. It's super exciting to be able to. I guess it's tricky being able to. You have to start from, I guess, not zero, but you're learning a new part of the business again. But how exciting or how important has that been for, I guess, your role now, where you have a good and a bird's eye view of what a lot of those different sectors or segments within the business can do.
I think amazingly useful. I think the Formula E is quite a unique it's sports rights holders, leagues and teams, but I think more so leagues are quite unique organizations in that they are quite human capital intensive, actually, I would say. And because of that, you need to be able to understand the realities of different departments to get things done the most efficiently. You know, it's because that is who gets things done. The humans. It's not, you're not working in a factory, or there is a degree of, you know, machinery that is involved in building a racetrack, but really most of it is human capital. And to get things done, therefore, especially in a really busy environment, I think just being able to empathize with what each department, kind of the struggles that they go through, what they do on a day-to-day basis. That's what the strategy side of what I did enabled me to do, working on these little projects for different departments. That's honestly been, especially in this role, actually invaluable, because again, this role is a certain vertical within Formula E, but we're working with all sorts of departments because there's so many different parts to it. And so being able to speak their language to a certain extent, sometimes unexpectedly, they're like, oh, okay, you know that thing. Yeah, really, really helpful. I also think the second part of that is, I think it gives you a good perspective on what can move the dial for the company overall, and what is, you know, I understand in detail what our revenue composition is, what our growth forecasts are from the strategy team. And so I'm able to somehow connect what we're doing in our department to what is moving the dial at a corporate level. So very helpful.
Maybe we can dive into that a little bit more, because obviously everyone knows Formula E for the racing series, but I guess your remit from a brand licensing and now games perspective is taking Formula E further and outside of, you know, traditional sports, let's say, and those audiences as well. So maybe we can dive into, I guess, a bit more around like what your day-to-day has been, and I guess how that role has evolved now that you've plugged gaming into it as well.
Yeah, my day-to-day. So actually, so I've been managing gaming for 3 years. So actually, the beginning part of that was lots of conversations and research on who we partner with. Mm-hmm. I've got a guy, our gaming product manager, Nick Topham. He's brilliant in the team. Shout out, Nick. So together, really, 3 years ago, we we were starting from a low base in terms of, we were in R Factor 2, which is a sim racing game, really. And Real Racing 3. So I think those are our two main games. And so we believed that the IP was attractive enough to partner with more publishers, and we were very clear, and still are clear, that we weren't ready for our own game. Mm-hmm. So the strategy, and the sport overall is in a growth phase. So the strategy overall was to enter new audiences. And the way to do that is to enter new games without diluting our IP value by being in games that aren't quite on brand, or that aren't growing in themselves, or don't have engaged audiences, or are at risk of being sunset, etc. There are a number of parameters that we set ourselves, but ultimately that was the strategy. So in the early days, it was growing. I think we're now in 9. There's a couple of launches coming, but by the end of the season, we'll be in 9 licensed games. So
if I can jump in,
yeah.
Was there any internal pressure, let's call it, for want of a better word, to say we should have our own game?
Yeah,
we want our own game.
Yeah.
And then how do you manage the pushback against that, saying, well, you're not ready for your own game?
Yeah,
I mean, there must have been a thought process there.
There's this desire to do something that has short-term noise. I'm not saying at an organizer, I'm not saying at a Formula E level, but at a human, personal level, there is a desire from me, from Nick, from other people in the business. And so it seems conceptually like the right thing to do, to launch your own game, especially when in the Instagram comments, a handful of fans are saying, launch your own, where's the Formula E game? Where's the Formula E game? So, but we've had a few experiences where it's sort of proven to us that it's not the right avenue to go down. One of them was, we had an NFT. It's all public, but we had an NFT game with a good publisher called Animoca, like really good NFT game publisher. The game itself wasn't that engaging, and then the NFT bubble burst. So that wasn't great. There are a couple of owned gamified experiences on our own web and app that have told us that maybe it's not the right avenue yet to go down. I know we can touch on that later, but there's been enough signals to tell us that for now where we are, let's put we know we've got great IP. Our publishers now know that we have great IP, but they had a feeling that we had good IP. And now we've launched into various games, Asphalt Legends, Asphalt 8, Trackmania, Real Racing 3. We relaunched into, the numbers are huge and way better than some of the early signals of our own game. So there's been a lot of pressure, but I think initially it was just look at these few data points and trust me. Now it's a lot easier to defend that we aren't quite because of how well the existing strategy that is going. But yeah, good question. That was.
You obviously have that portfolio of partners and games that you're now part of. So I guess each gives you a different way to tell the Formula E story, and it allows you to engage with different parts of the audience as well. So we'd love to maybe dive into, I guess, like that journey to figuring out like what games made sense and where your IP would show up in the best kind of way and what audiences you were looking to target, and then, how you crafted those partnerships to make sure that you get Formula E in the right kind of places.
The possibilities now, I would say over the last maybe year or so, have been a lot more in terms of who we can partner with. So we have now people approach us instead of necessarily the other way around 3 years ago. Now, not loads of, but there are people that are approaching us. Nick's having lots of combos. I'm involved in some of those combos. I would say choosing who to partner with really comes down to, I think the benefit is where we are is we don't have massive revenue pressure on our department specifically. So that enables us to really choose from a brand and from a player base and engagement perspective who to go after, which I don't take for granted at all. And because of that, we've been able to do deals we wouldn't have otherwise been able to do, speaking frankly, which have actually reached and really resulted in big numbers. So I would say that's the first thing, the revenue versus reach thing that we have. The second thing is who we partner with then. So we have different, we have a grid of genres of game, market mapping. And so we know where the gaps are, where we're doing well. I think in the fantasy arcade area, that was an area we wanted to fill because, we got Asphalt, we got Trackmania, we've now got Roblox. Like we're doing great. I think sim racing, again, we've got to launch, our Gen 4, we're developing with a new platform. I think where we're missing is a really a console game, like a kind of mainstream console game. We would love that. Asphalt is that, but what I mean is a realistic console game. So, we're aware of that. We're in conversations. But I think that's how it's a sort of detailed answer to get to the overall answer, which is we kind of have our genres of game that we know we want to be present in, and we're just trying to fill them with the right partners. And the right partners is a combination of reach, engagement time, and brand, sentiment towards it. And we have done some research. We have a kind of overall fan survey that we do biannually to all of our fan base. And in that, we have some gaming questions where we kind of test the waters with different things. But part of it is also, like everything, a bit of feel, mine and Nick's judgment. Yeah.
No, it's quite cool that you have a fan survey where you can get feedback that can then advise your strategy as well. Because clearly, like you're saying, you have some super fans, if you will, that will egg you on to try and do some things that would be beneficial for a smaller group. And you want to service that audience clearly.
Yeah.
But I guess Formula E as a brand has been around for quite a few years now, so people are aware of that.
Yeah.
And I guess it's figuring out how do you deliver, if we're talking specifically around like gaming experiences that those super fans would want, but also bring Formula E into arenas where people can discover the sport still. Because I guess, there's the actual like sport and the races. And as we were chatting about, there's a type of person that, whether it's a motorsport fan that wants to follow along and watch the race, that's something for them. But then also, you've got this whole narrative around sustainability and whatever else too, that is and can be an in for, different audiences as well, that aren't necessarily as enthusiastic around the racing or motorsport side of stuff too. So I'm intrigued like how you find that balance between, wanting to service that super fan and also, bring in new audiences to Formula E too.
Yeah, we're very heavily leaning on bringing in new audiences. So all of our, and I would say we're talking a lot about gaming, but there's the whole physical licensing and that we do in merchandise. Merchandising is more for avid fans naturally who are willing to come and buy Formula E merch, but licensed products, I would say, sits in between how we treat gaming and merch and the funnel. Balance is very much right now towards accessing new audiences. Now, I would say if you're an existing Formula E fan, love Formula E, you would, and you're a gamer, the Trackmania project's really fun to play.
Yeah.
Like that's just a great thing. Or the Asphalt Legend, playing with a Formula E car and Asphalt Legend. So I don't think it's either or. It doesn't, but naturally, it's those avid fans that are calling for a Formula E game that we spoke about earlier, where they want the full suite of IP. They want all the tracks. They want all the generations of car, all the drivers, all the teams. Whereas I think what we're doing, we'll always, apart from really where we can get to with Roblox, the rest of them is a more limited scope of IP. You'll have a selection of tracks, if at all. You'll have the car, and you'll have a selection of teams, if at all. So I can understand from an avid fan perspective, the IP scope that we could put into an actual Formula E game and develop that year on year is more attractive. And, as someone, I shouldn't necessarily say it, but growing up as a Formula One fan and playing every single generation of Formula One game for like 10, 12 years, that's how I now know when, as an education thing, I now know the turn that each of the drivers are on when I'm watching the broadcast, right? So it's an amazing education thing. It was amazing for me as a fan to be able to drive with those teams and drivers, my favorite driver on my favorite circuit. That was an amazing thing. And I think we'll get there. I just think right now where our sport, we have to make that trade-off. It's a trade-off, and we have to make that trade-off for the stage of growth that we're at the moment.
I guess you've mentioned Roblox a couple of times now.
Yeah, great project.
So I would love to just dive into that too, because it's one of your more recent launches as well. And I guess, it makes up that portfolio that we've talked around, but there's a lot of noise around the platform. Everyone's kind of treating it as a way of engaging with youth audiences now as well. So we'd love to dive into kind of your thinking around the platform and I guess your strategy around it too, because I know you've got your own experience, and then there's always that push-pull between like integrations or, building your own experiences too. So we'd love to dive into that. And then I guess you've done some updates recently as well that have been quite platform native, I would say. So you've got brain rot stuff going in, and I would love to dive into kind of that conversation internally as well around what the hell is brain rot and why is it going into our game. So yeah, those two things.
Yeah. So rationale for Roblox was kind of consistent with the rest of it, which is we want to reach a new audience. We want to reach a massive audience. I think the Q1 report or Q4 report is 151 million daily active users on the Roblox platform.
That's
crazy. That Rocket League, Fortnite. I mean, Rocket League is smaller, but from a motorsport perspective, it's big, and Fortnite obviously massive. So we wanted to enter a world, and we felt Roblox had there were a couple of like established driving games in it, Driving Empire, Formula Apex, and it had a really, the target audience. I mean, Fortnite, they're similar target audiences, but it had a young demographic. And we found an agency, Phoenix, which we kind of felt we had comfort with. We've been approached by various agencies over the years to create Roblox universes, but we felt Phoenix had a certain type of vision, and the control between us and them was also well balanced, where we got to, where we are now. So yeah, we went for it. Strategic rationale was clear, exec was happy with the decision. And we always, even in the contract, it says we talk about fantasy content. So that was always part of the plan, because that's how we tap into. It's not just about Formula E's fixed IP entering a space, but also how you can be creative with the IP. Yeah. So which was the seed of that was really Trackmania actually, because that was we had to apply our team's liveries, Jaguar, Nissan, Porsche, to the Trackmania car. So that was a strange concept in itself. We'd never done that before. And so then we felt that almost gave us a bit of confidence to then be more creative in Roblox. And then, we launched with 2 tracks, 1 car. We built out more tracks. We've launched 4 tracks since. So I think we'll have 6 tracks in the game. We still have 1 car. More generations of car are coming. And then now we're doing these fantasy events. So the first one of which is Brain Rot. So the trailer, if you've seen us post the trailer, so for Brain Rot, for, if you don't know, it's AI slop. These characters have kind of been generated out of people playing around with AI. And there are these 4 characters from Italian Brain Rot, which all have Italian names, that we turned into effectively Formula E racing suits, cars, helmets. And we did a 4-week time-limited event. So you could, you play it and you can unlock these characters and you have them in your garage. And we've just launched an intergalactic event. So Formula E on the moon. Very similar premise, except this time these 4 characters are battling a cosmic conqueror. Which, by the way, the kid in me, I'm like, that's so cool. Love it. And actually, would love to build. You'll see more characters or the same character pop up through certain events, building equity into some of these characters. And the rationale really for it is there's loads of kids that just want to play with, excuse my language, but cool shit, Like, and it's really as straightforward as that. And there is a test and learn process that we're going through. So we're the Phoenix team are really good at providing weekly dashboards for us on the performance, crazy number of metrics. There's 3 or 4 that we're in particular looking at tracking to see how these events are obviously monetizations especially from Phoenix's perspective as our developer is really important. But we're in a period of investment, so there are other metrics that are just as important at this point. So and it seems to be the Brain Rot one. I think got real backlash on Instagram when we launched the trailer, but it's not really for that audience. So we kind of they felt as if their favorite sport was validating AI. And whenever you see an AI meme or you just have to look at the most liked comment to see that underneath it to see that people aren't appreciating AI content. So there was a bit of backlash, to be honest, and I think that was a learning for us. Also about which channels to promote which types of events. Yeah. Not everything needs to go on Instagram. So we take that, but the actual event seems to have done well. So we'll do more of it.
That was a question. I mean, with just Roblox alone, there are so many games on Roblox. I was astounded at Stake 3 last year. Someone said something like 6 million games or something on Roblox. It's insane.
Yeah,
anyway,
it's a lot more now.
So
I think.
now it's more.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So how does discovery?
Yeah.
Great
question.
And that's the question. I think that has to be top of mind.
Yeah.
For you, how does that work?
Yeah. Three main ways. First is organic promotion to our fan base. Now that's a very small percentage. The second is organic traffic that just finds it. You want to play a motorsport game, you'll find it organically if you're really searching for it. The third way, which I think for us is the most important at this stage, is paid advertising, to be honest. So it works in a very similar way to to Meta, to advertising on Meta. So you'll put ads, or YouTube is a better example. You'll hero it on the homepage. So you put a little bit of money into heroing the game on the homepage, and then if it does well enough, actually the algorithm picks it up and will organically hero it. So what we're trying to do is, you don't want to overinvest, because if you overinvest in and you aren't getting the click-throughs, then actually the algorithm deprioritizes it because it looks at it as like a not very interesting thing. So it's a balance of spending just enough money to get the algorithm to, and the game needs to be good. So we've also haven't marketed it heavily yet, because we are still building. I believe it's a good game now, but the content is light naturally. It only launched 6 months ago. So we are building, and we'll go heavier and heavier on that until we become a driving empire or a Formula Apex. I mean, I know I'm meeting the guy from Voldex tomorrow, so that's part of the discussion. But yeah.
Yeah, I think at the time of recording, Roblox has just announced that they've updated how they're putting the algorithm as well. So like how they're surfacing stuff and what gets pushed up and what doesn't. So I think it's always like it's a moving target to some degree, right? Working with any platform, but especially Roblox, because they're bringing out new things all the time. There are that many experiences there that you're somewhat competing against. So I guess it's always like figuring out what's going to shift the needle, what's actually going to get this in front of the right people. But I think to your point, it's actually, especially from a brand experience perspective, a lot of people aren't comfortable actually like creating something that fits the audience or fits the culture of the platform. And if you don't, then it just ends up with this. Yeah, it's not fun. People play games to have fun, right? Yeah. That's the end goal of it. So I think what you guys are doing is experimenting, testing, and learning, which is it's a good spot to be in, where you can try something out, and it's good to have that exec backing on being
credit
able
to them as well for letting
well.
us be that creative. Yeah,
but that's a super point, Joe. I mean, the game has to come first.
Yeah.
The brand, obviously, you want to promote your brand and so on. But as you said, the brand might be there, but if the game is not fun, I mean, who cares?
Exactly.
And in fact, it's a negative.
Yeah, exactly. It's it hurts your brand. So we're very, in fact, and that pushes us to do some of these more creative things. To your point, actually, Roblox is such a creative platform, and you see it in the way that a lot of the IPs show up. Like, they are not traditional games, and I think that and actually quite simple game mechanics as well is the other thing. So taking those two things into account, the kind of creativity, the novelty that Roblox games bring, and then the simple game mechanics, I think both of those two things are push us to be to move away from a traditional driving game. Just putting our tracks and our cars in the game and hoping people show up.
So there's two things that I'd love to dive into. One is, obviously, like you said, you've been pitched over years around building experiences, but also there's been a definite shift of brands and IP owners integrating into experiences as well, whether it's the driving empires of the world or whatever else too. So I'd love to maybe dive into your rationale behind building your own experience, and I guess like what that gives you versus integrating. Then also, you're in year 3 now of Trackmania, right?
Yeah, just finished year 3, yeah.
So like, I guess, you're earlier on in your Roblox journey, but maybe we can talk around like the journey that you've been on from a Ubisoft and Trackmania perspective, and some of the learnings that you have that you're then applying into this journey as well.
I'm going to answer your second question first because I've actually forgotten your first question.
We'll come back to it.
So second question, there's something about teams and sponsors I haven't mentioned, which I think is a big learning from Trackmania. These games can actually deliver a decent amount of media value for our teams and partners. So, which is great. So Trackmania year 1, Trackmania year 2, even though the number, the game is a smaller game, it's all public info. It's a smaller game than say an Asphalt or Real Racing 3, certainly a Roblox. The media value generated was very good, actually disproportionately high, because the level of IP we had in the game was high, and actually because we ran an esports competition in year 1 and 2, which is broadcast on YouTube, and the competitors in the esports competition streamed on their Twitch. The media value is outsized versus the player base. And also we owned, we had tracks in there versus say Asphalt Legends. Real Racing 3, we have tracks, but Asphalt Legends is a good example. We don't have tracks in there. It's just the car. So all the trackside branding, that was delivering a really decent level of value versus versus the benchmarks of other games, but also what we were expecting. So that we've carried through to Roblox, which is like, we're able to, that generates, and we've got bigger player numbers in Roblox than we do from our Trackmania project, naturally, just by virtue of it being a bigger. So the media value off the back of that, we expect to be very good for our sponsors. And then taking it a step further with Roblox, which is like branded quests and special liveries and special items, UGC items that you can wear on your avatar, not just within our game, but other games as well, which are all things that are to come, but they're on our roadmap. We can do them now. It's just brands want to understand how the game's doing, etc. So I think there's a whole team and sponsor media exposure element. I think the other thing I mentioned earlier is the creativity. So fans really loved it. In fact, just from I'm a Instagram user, just from our millennial Instagram user, not TikTok. But I just seeing the trailer, the video views, the engagements, the comments that come from all of the content that we're generating, and most, a lot of those players aren't playing the game. They just like what they're seeing. They think this is cool content, like, Formula E on the moon or whatever. So I think that's the confidence Trackmania gave us, almost like unwillingly, because we having to apply this, just the format of the game. We went in with let's recreate Formula E in Trackmania, but then over time, the natural format of Trackmania has forced us to adapt a little bit, which has given us confidence to Roblox. What was your first question?
It was mainly around that, like the owned experience versus integration. I guess you've kind of covered it in the fact that you have more control over how the experience develops, and then also how you're integrating partners into that story too.
Yeah, and Phoenix, by the way, from a control perspective, I think it's really important between a rights holder and an agency to. We have it on the physical licensing side in reverse, where we don't have enough control, and it doesn't feel good because it's our brand.
Yeah.
And I think we've got it really right with Phoenix, where they really respect when we say no, or our creative direction. So they're ultimately in charge of the creatives, but they really respect, So that's also meant that it's going well and will continue to go well. Yeah.
Maybe we can talk about how you are blending the physical race experience along with the kind of digital gaming experience as well, because you've had the gaming arena at some of your recent races.
Every event, yeah.
So like, what's the thinking behind that? Is it that you're getting, we've just been talking about how do you get it in front of the right people? Is it mainly just around getting people testing it out, experiencing it, hopefully carrying on at home? Because I guess you've done some of the hard yards in the fact that someone's already at the race. Yeah. So is it more just around introducing the gaming side, or the Roblox side of what you're doing to that audience that might not have found it already?
Yeah. When I started managing gaming 3 years ago, gaming at Formula E was the gaming arena. Maybe that's a bit unfair, a bit extreme, but that was overall my perception, which was because we are, as you naturally end up being an event. We are one version of us as an events business. Mm-hmm. It's not what we are. We're a sport. We're an entertainment platform. But one version of what we are as an events business. And so, a lot of our employees would just see the gaming arena as the only thing that we are, and they wouldn't see any digital content, no trailers, no nothing on social media, no announcements, no driver content playing our games. All of that was quite limited. At the time, for a couple of seasons, 2-3 seasons. So actually, we've flipped it over the last 3 years, where the perception people understand internally and our fans see more of the licensed content, and actually the physical stuff is just a means to activate the licensed content, to your point. Gaming Arena is like our most popular fan village activation every race, queues and queues and queues. In fact, we introduced a virtual queue where you walk up and scan a QR code 2 years ago, because at some races, fans were having to wait, if you can believe it, between 2 and 3 hours to get a 9-minute race on a simulator. So it just pains you, it hurts you to see one of your fans waiting 2 hours to get a 9-minute. But then it's like a roller coaster. Once you've had your amazing, you forget about the queue and you're like, that was the best thing ever. So it was okay, but it was just, we've introduced a virtual queue, but it's the most popular. One of the things Nick and I have done over the last 3 years is introduced more, because of how popular the gaming arena has been, more gamified activations. Mm-hmm. So iPad areas, console areas. In London, we'll have 4 of our games as consoles or PCs. So we'll have Formula Legends, Asphalt Legends, Roblox, and Trackmania, all in like a cube or an X. So that'd be very nice to see. So because fans want more gamified. Now, nothing compares to sitting in a simulator. Like that's cool. That will always have the longest queues. But in terms of an objective, it's more about, we fund it, not our licensees. We choose to put the money behind it. It's not them. But that's because it helps from a fan engagement perspective. So that's really the objective, just allowing them to have a good time. Ultimately, the number of people who come to our events and then go on to play the game And in some cases, we can track that because we have QR codes you can scan where you have a download link. It's very little. You know, we know it's very little, but it's more about you're on the day, you want to have a great time, you're waiting between qualifying and race, like, let's play this thing.
Is the emphasis, talking from a reverse perspective, like with these kind of game experience or digital experiences as a whole, is the emphasis of still trying to get people to a race day, or, you know, in their own right, are these kind of digital fans just as important for you guys?
I think digital fans are just as important. The thing that drives all sports is if you had to pick one metric, it's audience. There's many metrics. There's ticketing. There's hospitality. There's sponsorship. There's licensing. There's all sorts. But ultimately, it's audience, and because audience not only impacts direct media rights fees, but also sponsorship value and value for teams. So digital fan, even if you've never come to a Formula E race and you've watched every race on TV, that's great. Like, you know.
We mentioned this before when we were talking about your approach to IP generally being almost like a distribution strategy, because you talk about audience. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's getting in front of people with what you're doing.
Yeah.
So
right,
how has that developed?
How's that developed in the sense of...
So you came from an audience as that's your aim, is to grow your audience, right? Is to reach...
more people,
more people,
and have them more engaged,
right. So
yeah, absolutely. I would say that so we're tracking from a gaming perspective, or is this an audience?
Yes, game. So it's gaming is almost like it's like an audience strategy for gaming.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So it's almost like not a television strategy, but it's similar.
Yeah, absolutely. It's in a similar way to. We're distributing our content. The only difference is you're not passively viewing it; you're actively participating in it, which actually from an educational perspective is even better. I think we're tracking the metric we track is cumulative unique players reached. So across our games and events within each game, how many unique players have we reached? So that's gone up year on year over the last 3 years. And engagement time is super important, and the two multiplied together, so aggregate minutes played, we're tracking that, and that's gone up over time. It's a bit unfortunate. One of the games that were delivering massive numbers, Real Racing 3, was sunset in April. So we're hoping Roblox more than makes up for it. It's doing okay, but yeah, that's something that we're laser focused on from in a similar way to you would track average audience or 1 minute cumulative audience from a broadcast perspective. Yeah.
Maybe because we're on the topic of audiences, and I guess it's super competitive out there to capture people's attention. There's films, there's TV, there's entertainment, there's games, etc. There's music, there's technology, etc., etc. What do you think separates Formula E from the pack? Like, what's your competitive edge? Let's say that if someone experiences something, then you think you've got them kind of engaged within your ecosystem, let's say.
Yeah, from a gaming perspective, our IP is powerful because it's another cool, in simple terms, another cool vehicle to drive. That's it. I'm not saying it's not that we don't necessarily need to be cooler than Formula One. Mm-hmm. We're just another really cool one that people can drive. So it looks great, it's fast, it sounds unique. I think great, but I appreciate not everyone thinks that. So, but it sounds unique at the very minimum. And so the differentiation is that we need to just continue to be that, and publishers will continue to want us, and players will continue to want to play. I would say from an overall sport perspective, we are a very different proposition to watch to Formula One. Just the style of racing is different. In fact, Formula One fans there's been a bit of a backlash with moving to more electric, as we all know, over the last 5-6 races. But there hasn't been a backlash with us because that's what they expect with us. Yeah. And so, inherently the propositions are different. The cars are, there's an energy management versus tire management strategy, which is unique. There is attack mode, which honestly is very exciting. And we've got pit boost where we've got 30-second fast charging, pit stops. So if you put it all together in a 50 minute race, it really is an interesting, especially for those avid fans who really understand what's going on. And there are levels to it because you've got energy management, attack mode, and pit boosts. So, that's a lot we appreciate that's a lot to focus on, but it is its own distinct category of racing, and people either like it or they don't like it.
Kind of shifting gears a tiny bit, and that's an awful pun.
Especially for electric.
I know. But maybe, and looking outside of games, like what's the biggest opportunity you see for Formula E at the moment? Like, what's the bit that you haven't explored or would like to explore that you think is a real kind of untapped opportunity for you?
Is that from a licensing perspective?
Yeah.
Like,
where would you like to take the IP?
Man, don't get me started. Well, I'll start. The one thing I've noticed is that our IP, and actually this is one of the thoughts I've had when I was reflecting on strategy versus my current role, is with strategy, it's very tangible. We will focus on the tangible metrics. So how do we grow audience? How do we grow impressions? How do we grow media value? How do we grow, all these things you can measure. Whereas with a lot of what we do in products or with IP, it's actually quite intangible. Now there's lots of tangible metrics, but the value of us to a developer initially is intangible in that or it's at least the intangible side of us, which is like fandom and the power of our brand. But what I've found over 3 years now is that the intangible part of that is strong. Like developers are attracted to it. Licensee brands are attracted to it. We had a Lego and Hot Wheels deal. We've had a Lego deal going back to Gen 2, when we were far smaller than we are now. And that was because Lego just liked the concept of it. There's this intangible element to it. And then they would bring the numbers through their network and their distribution. So I would say that the intangible, that the power of our brand is great. And in terms of where to take it, I would love it to turn it into, mass market products and experiences. I'm super interested in the experiential side. So we're the fastest accelerating single-seater race car. Could we create the fastest accelerating roller coaster? Could we partner with Merlin Entertainment or Universal Studios or Disney and create a roller coaster? We're launching our first electric karting centers in Saudi Arabia this summer. Could we do more? Could we have some in the whole karting fleet in the UK with Team Sport has transitioned almost entirely from combustion to electric. F1 Drive is electric. In the US, K1 Speed is mostly electric. So could we roll out more Formula E karting centers to make them authentically Formula E, add attack mode, add pit boost, add so on and so forth? So I think there's a whole experiential side. Then there's obviously the simulator F1 arcade side. I think that's more generic because you're ultimately in a simulator. And then then there's the mass market stuff. Like we love Lego, if you're hearing this, Hot Wheels, so on. Those sorts of things, those things that give us reach, but actually the product is just awesome. And we know with our IP, we can create a really interesting product because we've done it with Lego for the last 6-7 years. So we'd love to put the Gen 4 into one of those situations. I guess you've mentioned the intangible, and I guess it requires two people willing to push a partnership forward. So maybe because there is intangible, there's an element of risk that comes with that as well, and maybe there's some stuff that hasn't gone as you had wanted it to, or that you've started and then decided it's not part of the strategy that you want moving forward. So have there been any examples of that as much as you've tried, it's just not pulled off the way you'd like it to? I would say two things. One, I mentioned the NFT project. It was not good. I think there were a few things. We were operating within a motorsport gaming market, which is big but not, it's big. Then within that, we were a Formula E specific motorsport game. Within that, it was a strategy game. So you weren't actually even driving the cars. It was a strategy game. Okay. And within that, you needed to buy NFTs to participate in it. So you're like whittling down the addressable market from a big thing to a smaller and smaller and smaller thing, to the point where you're really operating within a very small niche, and it wasn't good. And I think that's probably an example. That deal was done in season 5 years ago. That was an example of one where the money was attractive and we went for it, and we put our hands up and say that it wasn't the right thing to do. So, as I'm sure lots of NFT participating sports will probably say now. Not that NFTs overall is a bad thing. I just think it needs to be executed really carefully, and we didn't. So that's an example. I think the other one is we had a predictor game for 3 years from season 9 to 11, which was our equivalent of fantasy. I was responsible, along with there was a group of us that for the relaunch of it. We've had it for a few years, and then the management of it in season 10 and 11. The player numbers were okay, but there was no growth in it, and that was a challenge. And we, I would say, the cost per user was quite high for that product. We partnered with Monterosa, who were great, but the cost per user was very high, and I think, or higher than we could justify versus where that resource could go elsewhere. So yeah, those two are examples.
Maybe that you kind of touched on, and we've touched on it before, but I guess like metrics, and I guess for each platform it changes slightly, and depending on the partner it could be. So like, is there any, I guess across the stuff that you're doing, metrics that you're tracking so that, if something is going a bit awry, that you can cut that out, let's say. But I guess, everyone's got different ways of tracking stuff, but is there a way that you guys are doing it so that across your whole portfolio?
We actually just try and homogenize the metrics that we look at. So the three main ones are unique players reached and engagement time. There's other things like number of races, number of liveries downloaded, there's revenue, there's other things, but from our perspective, we care mainly about those two. So number of players, how long they've played, which is very similar to broadcast. And then the third one would be media value generated for our teams and partners. So we try and homogenize that across all of our games. And yeah, it's the same thing. If we're seeing player numbers down, then we kind of understand. I think developers will usually call it quicker than us because they'll look at monetization and they've done their maths and they've done their budgets and they know.
From a brand perspective, and I'm talking about your partners and your commercial partners, and sponsorship, of course, is a big part of motorsport. How interested are the brands in the audience numbers on the gaming side? I mean, they traditionally look at things in terms of
Great question.
In terms of broadcast and in terms of that audience.
I don't think they understand it. Like, what does as well? By the way, there's many brands that are super clued up on it, but I think naturally it's just a more nascent area. What does 1 million players mean? Like, what is that good? Is that not good? So how much money do I pay for 1 million players to see my brand in a game? So, and I know that some of the agencies we use, actually measuring media value for our gaming projects was new to them, and they've translated it from measuring media value from TV. And adjusted it slightly.
It could be worth 10x.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, just throwing it out there. So
it's true.
There's a disconnect.
Yeah, it's true.
I think.
Yeah. I think honestly, I don't think it's the understanding is at a very mature level. At least what I've seen. Even our understanding, publishers' understanding. Like, when we say we're measuring media value, the role of the publishers now is to send whatever screen grabs that they need, and then the agency that we use does the maths. But there's no feedback loop where we then go and tell Ubisoft, by the way, this is what it generated. Ubisoft are just delivering player numbers. I'm sure internally they have, they've got sponsors, and I'm sure they're doing their own thing. But at least our dealings have been at a quite kind of not primitive's harsh, but like
learning curve. It's a learning curve.
It's early stage.
I would say. Yeah. And so the way we do it is we just put a CPM against seconds of exposure multiplied by the size of the audience. And the CPM, I think that's probably, maybe what I'm trying to say is where the CPM could be refined over time, because the value of a Roblox audience is very different to the value of because you can't market to a 12-year-old, you're not allowed to, especially if social media is being banned by, so it's getting harder and harder. So actually, does the CPM in Roblox go up even further? But also, you've got a lot of kids playing on parents' accounts. So actually, the demographic of you don't the mix that you think you're marketing to is not actually correct because so it's a lot more complex the more you try and pin down an accurate CPM. So I think it's difficult for the agencies, and I don't blame the brands for not understanding if like the agencies measuring the value don't fully understand it. I don't think. And I think it's just an education over time. How we do it at the moment is I think people ultimately do understand like the quantum. Benchmarks really helps. So, okay, is 1 million good? Well, this is your average monthly active user base of Gran Turismo or Forza. And that tells you that, and they're like, oh, that's the biggest game in the world. Well, actually, this is not so bad then, So there's benchmarks help. I think also the absolute quantum does, 1 million people do turn their head at 1 million people, whether that's good or bad, right? So I think that does help. But definitely, we could probably also do better at educating sponsors ourselves.
Yeah, I guess it's always that, like you say, everyone loves big numbers. It's it's attractive. But really, is 1 million people just glancing at something better than 10,000 people that are fully immersed into it? So it's it's the whole conversation around like a lifetime value of a fan, and especially because you're involved in these experiences now that are trying to educate audiences around the sport, and I don't think, especially if it's a youth audience, they have the purchasing power to be able to go out and immediately go and buy stuff. And I know that's not your objective either, but I think it's an education piece, especially from a sports perspective, that entertainment and games does it a lot better in the fact that it's all around how do we get the IP in front of the right audiences, and then how can we activate them in some way, shape or form, but you have them within that ecosystem already. So,
and the other thing we haven't spoken about is first party data, which we don't currently have access to contractually, because some games are capturing it, other games are just usernames, so there's not even a first party data exchange between the players and the game. But like, for example, Roblox does capture it, but there's no agreement. I mean, firstly, we're working through a developer, so we're not even, but I would say that it's there are things that us and our developer can do to leverage our game to generate first party data, loads of things, competitions. You could do a livery. One of the things we're looking at is a livery design competition where players submit their designs. So I would say that there are creative things. There's the event stuff that we could do with the codes. Although we have seen that that's not as effective. So I think probably digital first stuff is better for first party data. But that's also another challenge, because to your point about conversion, like if I present a slide of millions of players have played a Formula E car in a given year. I then can't prove the onward action. Have they then gone to watch on TV? Yeah. Have they gone to where first party data is a tangible thing where you say, no, but off the million, we have actually got 100,000 email addresses through X, Y, and Z initiatives. And then that suddenly becomes, there's a bit of a conversion journey there. So that's also I know it's a focus for our CMO, Ellie. But also, and for us going forward as well,
really cool. So maybe just to summarize and maybe just to round out, we'd love to, I guess, dive into where you see Formula E going. And I know we've touched on it slightly from a licensing perspective, but let's talk a very big picture. If you're a sports IP, like how do you think you need to be positioned to succeed at this intersection of sports and kind of games?
I think in one sentence, be flexible. So in a lot of our collaborations, even on the physical side, we've shown real flexibility in not devaluing it, but leaning into the natural behaviors of the audiences of the licensees we're working with. I think that's probably the best thing. If I take an example of a really strong loyalty program, like American Express Avios, you're effectively rewarding people for the behavior they're anyway doing. You're leaning into that. I'm anyway transacting. I'm not trying to change your behavior. I'm just making you transact with our card. And it's that kind of ethos that we're trying to bring into all of our projects, where we're just saying, it's a really bad example, but Sun God, we did a collaboration with them, right? In a full blown example of that, as a pair of sunglasses. Instead of buying a generic Sun God's pair of sunglasses, you just buy a Full Mirror E one, because so you anyway buy sunglasses. It's potentially a bad example, but I would say flexibility, leaning into their audiences, and like working really collaboratively with them. And what I would say is long-term partnerships. One of the things is we don't just dip our toe into something. We want to build, like, honestly, year on year on year on year. Every single year, we want something to be going on with every one of our licensees, whether it's gaming or physical licensees. So even if we're not launching new content in Asphalt Legends, we still want there to be time limited events. Something where, or with Trackmania, it's the third year. The first 2 years was long form racing formats. This year we've done weekly shorts, which are like 25 second tracks. So how can we innovate with each one? And we wouldn't partner with, in short, we wouldn't partner with a licensee if we thought it was going to be short term. So
yeah. No, I think, like you say, it's once you understand, they understand what you need and you understand what they need. It's being able to, they can come to you with stuff and you can go to them with stuff, and there's that kind of agreement there that you understand what helps each other. So cool. Listen, Sanjay, that was really, really fun. I think it's really nice to dive into what you guys have been doing, and yeah, it's been great. Appreciate you coming on. Jay, thanks for joining me.
Big thanks.
Thanks everyone for listening or watching, and we'll see you for the next one.
Thanks everyone.